Hey guys. This is part 13 of What If Shikamaru was the main character. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start. Chapter 61, Kaigen Waiting, the real Kirigakure. So, bad news and good news regarding the Kakashi Hatake debacle, said Ao. You know how I was following up on him and his team so we could make sure about all that, you know. Yees? May asked. Get on with it. Well, I was able to observe a recent engagement he was in. A team from Konoha was transporting what I believe to be the Ichibi Jinchuriki, which they stole, or won, from Suna quite some time ago during the Chunin exam before last, and they were intercepted by a few missing nin. Hatake's team was one of two sent for backup. They managed to defeat the attackers, quite spectacularly I may add, though there were several casualties. That's not important though. What is important is that in the past year, Hatake's fighting style seems to have changed drastically. Well, you can't expect a shinobi of his caliber to remain the same all the time, Chojuro stammered. Part of the reason those guys stay alive is that they're always one step ahead of the competition. It's like when animals evolve. I'm not talking about learning new techniques, Chojuro. Well, I mean, he did learn new techniques. But more than that, he completely changed his fighting style, more drastically than can be reasonably expected. I didn't see him use his regular supply of elemental ninjutsu, not even once, unless you count a few lightning manipulations I'd never seen before, but they're not important. They weren't actual techniques that required hand seals, just raw, unformed, highly controlled chakra. You did mention last time that his Sharingan and both his arms are injured beyond use, possibly permanently, May pointed out. It would make sense that he adapt himself to the situation. If he copied a new technique to cope, but no, he would have had to do that before he lost his Sharingan, not after. Do you mean an original jutsu? Yes. And no. It's a new technique for him, but it's neither original, nor did he steal it. How can a technique not be copied and yet not be original? Is it some secret clan thing? A new random bloodline limit that we've never heard of up until this point that some god of the universe just pulled out of his ass to make the world a little more interesting? May asked sarcastically. Something that doesn't require hand seals, obviously. Did that taijutsu friend of his teach him a few new tricks? No, it's definitely something we know. In fact, it's something the whole world knows, unless you live under a rock. Damn it, Ao, stop stalling. What was it? Hiraishin no Jutsu. What? Ao took a deep breath. Hiraishin no Jutsu. The teleportation jutsu that wiped out an entire IWA regiment. Yes, I know. What the hell? Kakashi Hatake with the Hiraishin no Jutsu? Are you sure? I'm pretty damn sure, unless there's some other technique that allows someone to disappear at will and pop up somewhere else. Even when all of us were invisible, we still had enormous amounts of trouble catching up to him. We only got in one hit that entire time, and the poor guy ended up dead for his trouble. Tell me, how the hell am I supposed to deal with someone with that in his arsenal? I'd rather have master of 1,000 jutsu than a master of one, if this is the one he chose to master. What were 1,000 IWA nin, each with their own ninjutsu, against one of the Yellow Flash? What were they? Nothing, of course. How does Konoha keep doing this? All those goddamn geniuses. The Yellow Flash might as well have come back to life. May shook her head. Let's not think about that. So, Hiraishin no Jutsu. You're thinking what I'm thinking? It could very well be that he's known it before but kept it hidden, and was abusing it to zip back and forth between Yagura and home. And he's only bringing it out now because everything else he used to rely on is now no longer an option. It would certainly explain how someone with his low chakra reserves could survive at S rank for so long. Chojuro blinked. So what do we do now? May rubbed her eyelids. Maybe it's time we made overtures to the Leaf. What? A secret delegation. One that ostensibly asks for help in liberating us from Yagura. And while we're there we gather more intel from the source. If Konoha as a whole is behind this, then we have someone on the inside. And if this really is the work of a single rogue actor, then we can be in a strong negotiating position for other things. One way or another, Yagura is dead. The Yamanaka clan compound, in Noichi Yamanaka's memorial service, was an oddly cheerful affair. It was less quiet, less subdued than what one would expect. Part of the reason Ibiki and Jiraiya had whispered to him was that the Yamanaka clan was trying to present a strong and united front now that their leader was a girl Gaara's age. She had to act like she was unperturbed in the face of tragedy, to keep the vultures at bay, and therefore the rest of her family had to act that way, too. The other reason, Gaara supposed, was because all the mourning had been done with already. Gaara was still trying to understand the customs of these Konoha people. It was similar to shinobi life in Suna, but also slightly different, and that made it a little harder because Gaara was never sure when he was right or wrong. True to ninja custom, burials were fast and efficient. In the field, bodies were usually stripped of all their useful parts, artificial tools or biological constructs, as in the case of Kekkai Genkai, and then cremated to prevent enemy troops from getting their hands on them. If cremation was not an option, then a corpse would probably be cut to pieces and buried, or hidden well. He'd also heard stories of ninjas who would order their own summons to devour them on their deathbeds, rather than let themselves fall into enemy hands after death. It was a small mercy, then, that they had managed to bring Inoichi Yamanaka to his home directly, and been allowed to see him laid to rest properly, though logically he had been taught to disregard the feelings of those already dead, for it was scientifically doubtful that someone who would never wake again would care about what happened to him. He liked that Inoichi's many family and friends would be able to see him one last time before they finally put him out of sight forever. That was the purpose of a funeral, Gaara thought. It was more for the people who were still alive than the dead person. He was one of those living people, he realized shortly after. He'd never thought himself one of the crowd. But he was, wasn't he? One of the many people that Inoichi Yamanaka had touched while he had lived. Even though the event was supposed to be private, the amount of people who knew him personally numbered in the hundreds. This thing must have been a logistical nightmare to organize. Whoever put this together, probably Inoichi's wife and daughter, deserved a great deal of recognition. The Hokage was there, plus some assorted officials and friends and family, including the other clan heads of Konoha, whose names Gaara was just starting to learn. Gaara, on the other hand, only knew Ibiki, and Jiraiya, and Yamato, and Anko so far. And the Hokage, and teams 7 and 10, sort of not really. They stayed with him even though Inoichi was gone, so he supposed they counted. He liked them, and they liked him back. He missed them, too, if they died, just like he missed Inoichi. Maybe they'd do the same thing if something happened to him. There were a few speeches. A lot of people had nice things to say about Inoichi. He had been a well-known and respected man. Gaara wished he could have nice things to say, too, but he didn't know what else to say that wasn't said already. Gaara didn't want to say something stupid or rude by accident and ruin the whole event, just because he accidentally had a slip in manners or missed out on some part of the culture that he hadn't picked up yet. So he remained silent. It was evening when Gaara spoke to her the first time. Inoichi's daughter, heir to the weight, no? She was the head of the Yamanaka clan, now. She'd spoken at the service, and looked a lot brighter and happier than she had been in the last few days. Gaara liked to think that Inoichi would have wanted that. People being happy, that is. He was the type of person to hate any sort of bad moods. He would have wanted people to move on. Gaara hoped he could be like that one day. Being okay with people moving on quickly after he died. Gaara still had trouble thinking of his own death, because he had never really been on the receiving end of that until recently. He hoped that people might be happy for him, too, but at the same time, he wondered if anyone would even miss him in the first place. He supposed he should show her some respect for that, even though he was about the same age as her. Maybe, if he was polite enough, she wouldn't kick him out. She had been speaking with another person when she saw him. He hadn't meant to eavesdrop. But he was standing next to them, and he couldn't help but overhear some things. It was a young man, one of the Yamanaka family members, but not one any of the others seemed to know well. An estranged relative, perhaps? It was clear, the way everyone stood apart from him. Gaara knew the signs of that all too well. But why? In any event, they had stopped talking before Gaara could figure it out, and now he was part of a new conversation. Hi. Don't mind Cousin Fu. He's just a little socially awkward. You're Gaara, right? She said. Yes. That's me. Gaara tried to remember the proper suffix for clan heads. But would it be rude to remind her of her father's death by making it clear that she was clan head now? He'd read somewhere that there was a certain grace period for mourning before the clan heir formally took on the title of clan head. Also, she was underage, wasn't she? Well, she was a genin, so she did technically have full citizenship right, but usually clan heads would have higher ranking in the general forces. You're awfully quiet, she said, and Gaara was jerked out of his thoughts, belatedly realizing that he had never addressed her. But she didn't seem too mad, so maybe she was fine with it. Sorry. I'm not good at talking. It's fine. It means you're a good listener. She smiled at him, and sat back. Gaara recognized this pose. Inoichi had done that a lot, when he was expecting Gara to respond back. He dug in the back of his mind, trying to figure out something to say. Inoichi-san told me that a lot. Gara searched her face for any hints of anger or sadness, but all he saw was a muted pain. So, she probably had gotten over it then, and was on the path to recovery. One of the books Inoichi had given him talked about the different stages of grief. It seemed she was past that. Inoichi had been right. She was strong. Your father was, he was my first friend, Gara added, trying to make conversation. I see. I'm sorry for your loss, then. But he was your father, wasn't he? So, I should be saying that. It was my fault. Those two, they weren't attacking your father, directly. They only attacked us because of me. They wanted me, because, I'm not supposed to say anything, but they wanted to hurt me, and your father and Ibiki and Enko and Yamato had to fight for me. But if I hadn't been there, those two probably would have left him alone, so, Ino held up a hand to stop him. No. Don't blame yourself for something that wasn't your fault. Those two assholes that attacked you, they were the ones who killed my father, not you. And now they're both dead, as they should be. So we can just move on from that, alright? Gara nodded. Alright, Ino sighed. I'm sorry I wasn't more welcoming to you your first few days here. I was in a bit of a rut, obviously. Anyway, my mom filled me in on all the details. Or, all the details my dad's teammates gave her. You're from Sand, right? Apparently you're supposed to be living with us now. So, welcome, Gara, and I hope you feel at home here. Konoha's a lot different from Suna, but you'll adjust quickly, and there it was. The validation he'd always been hoping for. Maybe this one, maybe he'd finally be happy this time around. Yes. Thank you. Say, you look familiar. I think I've met you before. You're from the Chunin exams, right? Gara's stomach dropped again. Would she judge him for what he had done? He hadn't seen her much during the exams. No one had interacted during the first phase, really, and he hadn't run into her at all, in the maze, and they had taken him away before the third phase, so… yeah? You seem different. I used to be, really bad. I hurt a lot of people, Gara admitted, going with his gut instinct that being truthful would be the best policy here. But your dad helped me get over a lot of my anger, so I'm hoping that I'll have more positive relationships with others in Konoha. I'm trying to start over here, alright? That's completely fine, Nino said. So, will you be my friend? He ventured, hoping this was the right thing to say. It was so hard, knowing the proper social decisions to take without Inoichi there to prompt him. But Ino was nice enough, so she was nice to him back. As in, if he was being awkward, as he was sure he was, she didn't comment on or otherwise draw any excess attention to it. And he was extremely thankful for that. Social interaction was such a difficult thing to get used to. I'm always glad to have friends, Ino said. And I bet my friends will be really glad to meet you too. You met Team 10 already, right? Sasuke, and Hinata, and Choji. Yes. Well, Choji was one of my childhood friends. Super sweet guy. He loves to eat. His whole family's that way. If he ever invites you over to dinner, do not turn him down, because his mom is like the best cook in the world. But make sure you're careful, because the Akimikis will totally stuff you until you're one of them. Hinata's also a really sweet girl. I think you'd like her if you got to meet again. She's kinda quiet, but she's really strong. She used to be super shy, but she's grown out of it. Hey, you're kind of shy too, aren't you? Maybe you guys should meet up. She'd understand what you're going through. And then Sasuke. Oh, it's so funny. I used to have such a huge crush on him. Me and my friend Sakura. Gara sat. And Gara listened. Oh, and I should tell you about my team too. There's Naruto, and Shikamaru, who was also a friend of mine before the academy, and Kakashi-sensei. And I have to tell you this story about what happened on our first C rank in Tanyu. It is so funny. Wait. I met you before the Chunin exams too. It was on that C rank. You were there, remember? Kakashi-sensei was trying to flirt with this girl. I think she was your sister, and she didn't take it too well. And Gara thought about what Inoichi had told him about Ino being a talker, and thought, wow, he wasn't kidding. Training Ground 3. So, Naruto began. I wasn't sure how to approach you about this because of the whole thing with Ino's dad and none of us really had the time, but now that we're here I have to ask you, so, the dog boss? Kakashi-sensei hid a smile behind his mask. What about him? Well, when we were back there, with Gara and the Akatsuki, I somehow managed to reverse summon myself into the dog summons realm, and I met him. Kakashi-sensei tapped his lower lip. I take it you spoke with one another. Yeah, how did you find him? Naruto considered this. Tough, but fair, he decided. Also, apparently the Shinigami's a giant asshole who stopped giving a damn about the rest of us a long time ago. No such thing as justice apparently, but I guess we already learned that. Kakashi-sensei nodded. Sounds about right. Yeah. But the dog boss is cool though. Naruto grinned. Way cooler than the Shinigami. He even let me talk to my parents. Well, I'm glad you got the chance. They were both wonderful people. Naruto grinned. That was how I managed to make the chakra chains. I talked to my parents. And my mom taught me how. I think the Kyuubi was there too. He sort of helped because I needed a lot of chakra, and I mean a lot. Plus I met my dad. Who'd have thunk the Yondaime Hokage was such a dork, huh? He was my sensei, Kakashi-sensei said, giving Naruto a light elbow to the side. Once upon a time he would have given him a pat on the head, but as it was, Naruto was starting to get too tall for him to do that anymore. Why do you think I turned out the way I did, huh? Naruto giggled, then sobered. Is that why you forfeited your connection with the dog boss? He said you willingly forfeited your connection with him. He said it was safer than him having to forcibly reject you. Whatever reasoning he gave you, he was probably telling the truth. He said that you didn't trust yourself to be responsible enough. Entirely fair. Naruto scratched his head. I just didn't peg you as the type to go blindly chasing after power for power's sake. I can see some guy like Orochimaru doing that. Not you though. Kakashi-sensei shot him a look. Not power for power's sake, no. But think of all those dead people. Do you really think, once I had access to those powers, I'd let anyone stop me? No, I suppose not. Look, Naruto. I'm probably one of the most emotionally castrated people in the world. But just because I strangled that part of myself as ruthlessly as any other enemy doesn't mean I don't know it exists. If I had the power to talk to my dead loved ones whenever I wanted, I'd never leave. I'd stay in the spirit realm until I went mad. You don't think you've changed since the last time you talked to him? Oh, I've changed. Just not in that regard. Not in the right way. Kakashi-sensei shrugged. I know it's hard to imagine, given your childhood as a prankster versus my childhood as a stickler for the rules. But you are more mature and responsible now than I ever was in my entire life. I don't regret my decision to part ways with the Guardian of Hell while we were still on good terms. As far as he knows me, we're pleasant acquaintances. Power is simple. Anyone can get it anywhere. I don't need his help to become stronger. But goodness knows how much he'd hate me once he had to deal with me for long enough. Not a good enemy to have. Definitely not. Naruto tilted his head. You look sad, sensei. Kakashi-sensei's response was to smile even wider. Maybe I'm just thinking about all the bad things I have ever done, and all the bad things I'm about to do. Naruto blinked. For a good cause, surely? Kakashi-sensei's lips pinched. Does it really matter? The Hokage's office. The worst thing about choosing a successor to any position of power, Hiruzen thought, was having to balance out all the various characteristics of the various contenders. There were those that wanted the job, and those that didn't. There were those that were fit for the job, and those that weren't. It just so happened that the ones most fit for the job were the ones that wanted it least, and the ones least fit for the job were the ones that wanted it most. And then, the Sandaime observed with a scowl, there was the fucking Nara kid. He'd counted on both Shikamaru and Danzo Shimura to meddle in his upcoming retirement plans. What he hadn't expected was for the boy to also be involved, but there was no other explanation. Kakashi Hatake, who had spent his whole life running away from that damn fool thing called responsibility. Not that Hiruzen blamed him, suddenly agreeing without protest. The Sandaime knew that Kakashi didn't care about anything in the world besides his precious little team that was not his team any longer because they were Chunin now, damn it. One of them was behind his change of heart, and it had to be Shikamaru Nara, because while Ino and Naruto were far more intelligent and politically savvy than any child their age had any right to be, only Shikamaru was actually involved, aware, and ruthless enough to push his sensei towards that sort of idea. I mean, it's not the worst that could happen. Problem solved, right? Jiraiya asked. Apart from the possibility that Konoha would burn down in less than a week, he'd actually survive that long. Unlike Tsunade or me. But the cursed seal, Hiruzen said. I thought you said it was still going to kill him, less slowly, though, Tsunade pointed out. Because Orochimaru's dead, so it's lost its potency. Also, between Hinata and me, and the extremely promising healing factor we're seeing from the cells she scraped from Haiden's corpse, there's a good chance we can keep him around until someone from the next generation is old enough to take over. Long story short, itty baby Kakashi might never grow old, but he'll make it to middle age, and by then someone from the clan kids generation will be in their mid-20s at least, which is more than good enough for Hokage. After all, Minato-kun was about the same age when he took over, and you, sensei, were only 18. I mean, Sunagakure has a practical teenager as their leader, and they seem to be doing okay-ish. As okay as Suna can do, anyway. Yeah, but that's Suna. Even if everything else goes to hell, they're not getting invaded. Konoha is significantly less defensible than their desert. The only reason why they weren't razed to the ground even after the rest of us sensed their blood was because there was no point. They're poor and situated out in the middle of godforsaken nowhere, Jiraiya pointed out. There is much less risk and much greater reward in trying to take the Leaf Village out of competition, is what they'd like to think. We, land of the tree huggers and sunshine and friendship and all that good shit, Tsunade said, emerging from behind a ceiling panel. Like a bloodhound, she'd managed to sniff out his stash of good alcohol, even after he thought he'd hidden it somewhere she couldn't reach. This was the third goddamn time she'd done it in the past week. And then they see the crap we get up to behind the scenes and realize just exactly why we spend more of our budget on PR than the rest of them combined. I do not appreciate that tone, Tsunade. Ha ha la-di fucking da. She poured a glass, set it aside, and then lifted the rest of the bottle to her mouth. Cheers. Hiruzen conceded that point. So we're sure then? Jiraiya asked. Kakashi said yes? He wasn't just trolling you. He actually meant it, something to do with his kids. That's it, the Sandaime said tiredly. How much does he know, exactly? That's the thing, isn't it? I don't know what game he's playing, but whatever it is, his cards are so closely hidden to his chest not even he knows what they are. He's a wild card. He doesn't care whose side he's on. He'd murder me, Danzo Shimura, Shikamaru Nara, one of us or all of us, if he thought it would protect his team. Likewise, he doesn't want to become Hokage, but he'll take any job if it means keeping his kids safe. The debacle with Fuyamanaka made him see sense, at the very least. Kakashi, after all, had once been in ANBU. Not just any random member of ANBU, but Team Ro. He had known that there was unrest, though not to what extent precisely, in the Uchiha clan. He had known that a negotiation mission had been planned with Fugaku Uchiha, that ultimately never happened because the massacre was over by then. Not to mention, he had been one of many cleanup crews at work after the fact. So no, he might not have been told anything directly, but only an idiot would think he wasn't smart enough to figure at least something out. And if not the Uchiha massacre, then a bunch of other classified material that no one paid attention to, keeping his mouth shut about all of it, of course, but ready to light the fuse if need be. Like Hiruzen had once done when he was young, and likely Minato after him, though he never got caught. Konoha was a flighty soul that could turn on a dime, even against her own, as Tsukumo Hatake could attest. Any shinobi worth his salt would take out insurance, for himself, for his loved ones, and for no reason at all. I hate to say this about Tsukumo's brat, Jiraiya said, but at this point I'm scared to trust him. I might say that trusting him with Konoha would be the stupidest thing you could ever do, even stupider than trusting Danzo Shimura. Funny, said the Sandaime, he told me those exact same words about himself. Chapter 62, The Two Demons of the Mist. The Nara clan compound. The house was quiet today, as it normally was. I treaded through the rooms with caution, careful not to disturb the silence. The best shinobi were shadows, silent and undisturbing of anything in their paths. No squeaky tile or floorboard was a proper excuse for making sound, for I had long since learned how to get around that. Tiptoeing was not as effective as one might expect, for it put all the pressure of one's body weight onto a small area. Shinobi were taught to walk in a different style, hunter style, stepping from heel to toe while rolling the foot like the arch of a rocking horse. It was a game that every ninja parent ingrained on their offspring, along with all the patriotic songs of duty to the village. As I made my way down the hallway to my father's room, I passed the rows of family portraits, each one featuring a different set of ancestors. I remembered this spot, this place where I as a child had hidden in the dark and listened to my parents violently discuss the rest of my future. My father's office was locked with a hexagon-sealed design. Perhaps if I sat down and thought about it for a long time I might be able to break it. It was a well-done thing, most likely a customized commission. Only the best for a clan head, after all. No doubt other people who had things to hide, people with enough power and secrets and gold, would have something similar on their doors. I raised my knuckles and knocked. From the inside, I felt the familiar pit-pat that came from human footsteps. That was my father. silent, as a trained shinobi should be. But he had not learned how to control the earth. The vibrations and depressions in the soil were minor, barely there, and I would have not noticed it happening had I not been looking for and expecting them. There was a shifting of locks, and he greeted me with a forced smile. These past few weeks he was looking as expected for a man who had just been to his best friend's funeral. I suspected I looked about the same. We were both coping with the loss the only way we knew how, scheming and plotting to protect what was left. Mum says it's time for dinner, and will today be a talking day or a thinking day? He responded, a thinking day, probably. Dinner, normally a time when I participated in conversation to get as much as I could from my father, was plagued with silence on my end. I could feel my orderly, logical perceptions of the world falling apart between my fingers. The demands of my brain gnawed at me like a rabbit at a snare, and I felt like I wasn't doing enough. I didn't quite remember eating. I did remember my head hitting my pillow, and then me waking up in my own bed with no memory of what had happened between then and morning. There was a few ninjutsu book I didn't remember reading halfway open on my nightstand. Upon flipping through it I realized that I already knew and understood everything up to the bookmark, and yet I had no recollection of any of the learning process. Training Ground 3. With the way Kakashi-sensei was pushing them, it was obvious that he was scared of something. The more paranoid he was, the more cruel he was during training. It was a mere fact of life. It was like he was desperately trying to offload all of his knowledge onto them for some mysterious eventuality. His skills were ultimately all the pieces of him that mattered, and they, his students, were his ticket to living after he was gone. Every day, Ino would see Naruto flitting in and out of the summoning realm, firing off ninjutsu until even the Kyuubi was complaining of exhaustion. Shikamaru's ceiling was getting better day by day as he figured out new ways to incorporate it into his shadow and earth, and occasionally, a few water and fire jutsu, though the frown lines around his mouth seemed to be getting sharper as well. Sometimes she'd even see Gaara hanging around, always with Jiraiya or Yamato looking over his shoulder to make sure Danzo didn't try anything funny. And as for Ino herself, it seemed like Kakashi-sensei was focusing on her more than usual. Normally he was pretty good about splitting his attention evenly between them. In the beginning he might have given Shikamaru some extra care just because of how smart he was, and Naruto some extra time just because of how much catching up he needed to do. But now she was the one with the laser eyes fixed on her, which was slowly becoming less and less fun by the day. She still had bruises from yesterday's kendo training. If Kakashi-sensei had been brutal in taijutsu, then he was even more so with his sword work. It did make sense. Ino was a new clan head, and she needed all the help she could get to prove that she was a fit leader, especially since she was so young and a girl besides. Mind techniques by themselves were already dangerous. Even the smallest nudge in the wrong direction could completely destroy someone. Mind techniques combined with lightning chakra? Something was going to explode. Summoning a giant bolt of electricity from the sky to strike one's enemies was all too easy if you had enough chakra, which she didn't, but that wasn't the point. But the human nervous system was far more delicate. She required much more concentration and precision, for she was learning everything in tandem with her clan jutsu which her father had been supposed to teach her, but never got the chance to. In a way, it was similar to Shikamaru's ceiling training. He could have and should have been on his fourth element by now, but he had put his elemental ninjutsu on hold to study something which, according to him, would be more useful for someone of his reserve levels. Ino didn't blame him. Not everyone had Naruto's insane stamina. They were all pieces of him. Naruto got the dogs and the general elemental ninjutsu. Shikamaru got the fuinjutsu and the strategy. She got the special lightning techniques and the swords. And all of them got the mind games. Ino was dreading what was going to come today. Today's exercise will be very simple, Kakashi-sensei said, pulling out a summoning scroll. What? There was a pop, and a watermelon appeared in front of her. Ino stared at it incredulously. Your task is to make me watermelon juice using lightning chakra only, without damaging the shell of the fruit at all, Kakashi-sensei said. Ino picked up the watermelon and held it in front of her face. It was one of the smaller ones, conveniently the size of a human head. She turned it over. Someone had drawn a face on it, in permanent marker. I have no idea how that got there, Kakashi-sensei said. Ino groaned and set to work. Generating a few sparks of lightning chakra in the air was easy enough. But when you couldn't see what you were doing, and there was an entire chunk of fruit in the way. Initially she attempted to materialize the lightning chakra outside of the watermelon before dragging it through, like a knife. But when it became clear that it was impossible not to scorch the shell with that method, she gave up on it and went back to the long way. That is, put her hands around the short end of the watermelon, and tried to generate energy in the core of the flesh without touching the outside first. It seemed impossible to do with just her hands alone. How many watermelons do I have to work with? Ino asked, eyeing the storage scroll. I got you the first 5 for free. Everything after that you'll have to get yourself. If you don't want to be wasteful, don't move on to the next one until it's clear that the one you're currently practicing on is decimated beyond any further use. Anyway, I doubt you'll have an issue with destroying a watermelon shell just yet. It's more likely you'll have trouble even summoning the chakra in the right location in the first place. Unless it wasn't just her hands? She looked over to the field where Kakashi-sensei was supervising Naruto and Shikamaru to make sure they didn't kill themselves testing out Shikamaru's new experiment. She'd lose nothing by asking for help. She knew there was more to this technique than just summon chakra and watch it work. It was just Kakashi-sensei's way, when teaching them ninjutsu, to let them try out some things on their own for a bit before they asked for help. But they were working on something very interesting right now, and she didn't want to interrupt. Some of Naruto's smaller dogs were running around in the bushes. Shortly after their training had ended, Naruto had managed to successfully summon 3 more dogs. There were 5 total in his pack now, excluding the 3-headed guardian of hell that none of them would get to see unless things had really gone to shit, which was understandable but at the same time so not fair because he sounded so cool. Shikamaru, Nadeshiko, the twin greyhounds, Scruffy and Fluffy, and after that, a giant black Doberman the size of a large draft horse which promptly introduced himself to his siblings as Sunshine. Ino still didn't know how the summons naming system worked, and frankly, by this point she wasn't sure she wanted to know. In any event, Shikamaru and Nadeshiko were currently out training the 3 new nin dogs in basic commands, so that Naruto wouldn't have to teach them again. That left them time to focus on Naruto's individual skills, which happened to be the replication of elemental Kekkei Genkai. Because, while what happened in Wave was scary, I have to learn to control it. Without the Kyuubi, if that's possible, Naruto explained. Even with all your natural stamina, that's going to require a lot of seals and multitasking, if you want to overcome the natural inefficiency in the environment without the Kyuubi's help. I can deal. Right. Hold out your hands. This will only take a second. Ino watched as Shikamaru painted the markings on Naruto's hands. For now, you should start practicing with air and fire, since those two are the easiest to combine. I know you've done fire and earth before, but air's your natural element. Whenever you're ready, make 2 clones. One of them should channel an air jutsu through that one, Shikamaru said, pointing to the marking that said air on Naruto's palm, and the other should channel a fire jutsu through the fire seal. And then what? Naruto asked. Just have them put their hands together. That's it. The seals should do the rest. But in case there's anything I missed, at least you're using clones, so you won't be stuck in the hospital with stumps for hands, Shikamaru joked. Naruto rolled his eyes. Great. Thanks for the confidence check. Hey, it's just ink. It'll wash off. I'm not going to stamp any permanent seals on you until I'm sure they work, yeah? You're lucky I have clones, Naruto groused good-naturedly, and summoned the clones. Okay, you guys know what to do. Ready? Ready, the clones chorused, fingers flashing through the hand seals, and even from far away Ino could sense the chakra building up in their lungs. At the last second, right before they were supposed to release their respective techniques, they slammed their palms together. There was a great gust of air, and a flash of heat, and that was all the warning they got before the patch of ground in front of them was completely incinerated. So, Naruto said, grinning, did it work? Shikamaru smiled. Now try it with water and fire. Together, the clones spat out a massive cloud of steam. Underneath it, the already scorched grass was cooked all over again. The nasty smell floated up to her nose, and Ino coughed. You all right there, Ino? Kakashi-sensei asked. I'm fine. Just exploring a bit. There had to be something she was missing. Ino lifted the watermelon and shook it. Maybe some added vibrational energy might. But no, even then, it was not enough. Ino thought about asking for another hint, but then she decided against it. If she figured it out herself, it would teach her so much more in the end. After all, if Kakashi-sensei had been the one to develop this technique, then that would mean no one had taught him, and he'd come up with the whole thing alone, from start to finish. If she ever wanted to become stronger, she'd have to get more creative, and that couldn't happen if she was spoon-fed every single bit of information instead of learning how to figure out stuff on her own. Step 1. Isolate the problem. It was a balancing act between power and control. Too much power, and the energy would burn the outside. Too little, and the inside wouldn't cook. The second option, however, was more easily rectified than the first. You don't have enough energy. This watermelon was her enemy, and it was stronger than she was in the context of this jutsu. Her task seemed impossible. For this to even work, she needed at least 4 more hands. 2 contact points simply wasn't enough, and then Ino nearly smacked herself in the head. She had 10 fingers. Fingers which were skinnier than palms and would definitely result in a more needle-like puncture pattern. Gods, that made so much more sense. Over in the distance, Naruto had finally hit trouble with combining air and water. Though, historically, that Kekkai Genkai produced ice, all Naruto was doing at this point was making colder water that spat itself out more quickly. It turned out there was more to solidifying water than just smashing air into it. Come on, come on! At first it barely felt like anything, a tiny little spark, and then the whole thing cleaved away beautifully beneath her chakra. She tried again, and yes, there it was. Gleefully, Ino experimented with different motions, from zigzag slicing to spinning, first with each hand sending the electricity swirling in the same, and then opposite directions. Then she tried different hand positions, with her fingers folded down, her palms flat, and even the backs of her hands. The soft flesh of the fruit melted beneath her palms like a stick of butter in the sun, all the while leaving the shell perfectly intact, apart from the mild scorches she'd left on it in her previously unsuccessful trials. Satisfied with her work, she broke open the watermelon and watched the juice drain out. It was liquefied, just as asked, or mostly. With dismay, Ino noticed that there were still a few chunks that she'd missed, most of them clinging to the edges. It was a good first effort, but considering the fact that she still had 4 more to practice on, it was clear that Kakashi-sensei expected no less than perfection. It took her another try to figure out how to scrape the inside of the shell properly, and 2 more after that to make her slices perfectly clean. By the time she'd gotten to her 5th one, she was feeling pretty confident about presenting her final result to her teacher. "I think I got it," she called. "All right," Kakashi-sensei said, wandering over. "Show me." She placed her hands on each side of the untouched fruit and began swirling her electric chakra, hoping that she hadn't exhausted herself without noticing. Luckily, that worry was unfounded. She felt the juice forming just as normal. When it felt sufficiently scrambled, she offered it up. "Well? Is that watermelon juice, or is that watermelon juice?" Kakashi-sensei simply smiled and poked a hole in it, draining out the perfectly done contents. Now for the final test. He cleaved the empty shell in half, to reveal a perfectly cleaned and scraped interior. "Well done, Ino," he said, and Ino beamed with pride. But then he added, "You were a bit slow, though." "What?" Ino spluttered indignantly. "Oh, come on, you were slow. You took nearly a full minute. Sometimes, you won't have even 3 seconds to do your work," Ino sighed. "Yeah, I know." Kakashi-sensei gave her head a condescending pat. Ino scowled. Rain country. This was as far as Zabuza had managed to track Kisame Hashigaki down before his trail had gone cold. For weeks he and Haku had camped out in this muddy, rainy patch of land, moving like nomads from one place to a next, never dallying in one spot for too long, hoping to get some glimpse of his fellow former swordsman. It was difficult, for the constant patter of precipitation made visibility and hearing near impossible, and wiped out almost any scent that the man might have left behind. It was a miserable time, to be sure, but he had had worse. At least, here, with plenty of moisture in the air, Haku would have no trouble performing and controlling his special jutsu. He, too, would have to expend less chakra for any water jutsu. Today, they'd finally had a stroke of luck, when the rain momentarily dulled for a few hours. Perfect timing, too, for just then he had managed to pick up a fresh scent. It was slight, barely noticeable, but there, of Kisame Hashigaki. It wasn't much of a window to operate on, barely enough. But Zabuza wasn't a dark legend of the shinobi world for nothing. He hadn't survived for so long by giving up on every difficult task set to him. After all, they nearly missed him, but once again, fortune was on their side, and they managed to catch the swordsman before he vanished again. "Momochi!" Kisame exclaimed. "What a pleasant surprise to find you here." "Could say the same for you," Zabuza said, acting like he hadn't been stalking the man for the past few months. "I had no idea you were even alive or dead. You seem to be doing well for yourself. Got matching uniforms, have you?" "What for?" To his credit, the young man next to him only gave him a bored look. Itachi Uchiha, the world's most notorious genocidal clan killer. He didn't look like much here, standing nearly a head below Kisame and looking only slightly less tiny than Haku. But then again, that was probably why he had ever managed the feat in the first place. "Don't play dumb, Momochi. Surely you've heard of the Akatsuki," Kisame grinned. Zabuza couldn't tell if it was truly a polite, happy smile or one that promised death. Both looked the same for men with shark teeth. To be fair, he had the same issue that I have, Zabuza admitted. Rumors traveled surprisingly quickly in the missing Nin underground network, even if other, more important communications were nearly non-existent. Though I still have no idea what you guys are, or what you even do. If we revealed that to men without our cloaks, we'd have to kill them, Uchiha suddenly said. Zabuza searched the boy's expression for hostility. There was none, despite the fact that he had just uttered a death threat. Then Zabuza realized that the emphasis wasn't on killing, but on cloaks. They weren't threatening him, at least, not as much as they were extending an invitation, out of curiosity. Zabuza narrowed his eyes. How's the pay, Kisame? All about the money, are you? Kisame laughed. I'd say the pay is pretty good. We did nothing but S ranks for the longest time, and not just any S ranks. They're the ones so bad that the regular hidden villages can't be trusted with them. So you're talking about at least 50 million every mission. Zabuza was unable to hide his jaw drop underneath his mask, to Kisame's glee. You've got to be shitting me. I assure you, I am not. Seriously? 50 million real? 50 million. At least, Kisame confirmed, and Zabuza didn't have to fake the greed shining through his eyes. He might be working for Meitarumi now, but old habits died hard. I know, right? You'd have gotten along with Kakuzu. Poor fellow, had 5 hearts and those Konoha ladies broke every single one of them. You're hilarious, Zabuza deadpanned. Kisame snorted. And you're funny, Momochi. We need a guy like you. Ever since Haiden and Kakuzu kicked the dust, it hasn't been as fun. I've been stuck with a bunch of emotionless rocks like this guy here, he said, nudging Itachi, who remained as impassive as ever. Anyway. The point is, the money's pretty good. Kakuzu, the old miser, he was the group treasurer before he got himself smashed to pieces, and he saved up quite a bit. You won't be wanting, not with us. Zabuza raised an eyebrow. Am I being recruited? Maybe. What's the catch? Is there a catch? Come on, Kisame. I'm not an idiot. There's always a catch in every contract. Kisame rolled his eyes. There's no catch here. Except for maybe that one little clause about life service. But hey, that's barely even anything. After all, we agreed to the same thing back in Mist all those years ago, too, didn't we? Kisame, do you really think you should? Itachi began. Stop being such a stick in the mud, Itachi. You heard Nagato. We have 2 empty spots that desperately need filling, and a week after that meeting, we run into 2 guys that might be able to fill those spots. Now, normally, 2 guys are nothing, compared to all the people who die daily, but when the population of the organization can be counted on your fingers. I take it your boss has fairly high standards, Zabuza commented. More like exclusive. But yeah, you're right. There are few enough people whose skill level are high enough for the Akatsuki as it is, let alone those who were actually in a position to join. Translation, we're able and willing S-ranked missing Nin. You should be flattered that you're in consideration, Momochi, really. That's your decision, then? Uchiha asked. You pick him? Kisame grinned. We need recruiting, and here's a perfectly healthy S-rank missing Nin in front of us. He's a swordsman, too. I'd say he's as good as any other candidate, if not better. Itachi shrugged. Whatever. Your call. Kisame turned back to Zabuza. Well? Are you coming or not? Am I coming? Of course I'm freaking coming. This is it. But Zabuza feigned reluctance. Am I coming? To your little cult party that I'll never be able to leave? After what little you've told me? You can do better than that. What else have you got? Kisame shrugged. Well, if you don't come with us willingly, we'll just beat you up and make you join. That's what we did to Deidara. That doesn't sound like good marketing tactics. It was part of a bet. Stupid rock mean, that's how they work. They've got their own brand of honor, you know? They'll lie, cheat, and steal anything they can, but they're very strict on power hierarchies. Anyway, just grab your shit and get the hell over here, alright? Fine, Zabuza said. But only if I get to bring the kid too. What kid? Kisame asked, as if just noticing Haku for the first time. Oh, that kid. Yeah, She any good? I'm a boy, Haku said. Oh, sorry, Kisame shrugged. Looks like you were right, Itachi. I told you, Itachi sighed. You didn't believe me about Deidara either. So, kid, you any good? Haku responded by transforming every tree within a 10-meter radius into an ice sculpture. The Yuki clan, Kisame said, impressed. I thought they were all gone. Yagura, didn't get all of them, said Zabuza. Can you do anything else? Kisame asked. Kekkei Jinkai is great and all, but if that's all you've got going for you then sorry. He was capable of defeating Chunin and Jonin twice his age, and that was 2 years ago, Zabuza said. By now he is definitely good enough. Anyway, you said you were missing 2 people for your exclusive S-rank missing Nin club. Beggars can't be choosers. Itachi pursed his lips. I doubt he is S-rank yet, he said. But you're right. We need manpower, and for our current purposes he's good enough. If Zabuza was a lesser man he would not have been able to hide his sigh of relief. But being a trained shinobi, the only expression he gave off was one of impatient annoyance. So, is that it? Are we done here? Yes, of course, Kisame said. Come on. I'll show you back to our place. You probably don't need to do any testing, since your reputation is already well cemented, but the kid might have to prove that he's, worthy and all. Not that I don't doubt him, but some of the others might take a look at him and think he's as little as he looks. What happens if they don't pick him? Zabuza asked. Kill me, probably, Haku said blandly. Smart. I like him already. Kisame grinned. Nah, he's pretty strong, so executing him might be a waste. We only save the gore for traitors, or people who know too much and might go snitching. So long as he's not going to rat us out to anyone, we'll probably let him work among the local Amigekyo population if he doesn't make the cut for the official team. Most of them, the lower-level ninja, support us. Or they support Pain, their god, and Conan, their angel. Sounds cultish, because it is. Pain? Your boss? Yeah. Pain would love to meet you. He's an okay guy, so long as you don't piss him off, because he'll absolutely destroy you if you do. Otherwise, he's a bit of a total grump most of the time, but then again, we all are. It's not his fault. Who can blame him for being perpetually pissy under all this rain? But he's an okay guy, trust me. He sounds really powerful, Zabuza commented. Well, you have to be if you want to lead a bunch of S-rank criminals and not have them all stab you in the back in your sleep, Kisame shrugged. With that, they headed out, and Zabuza wondered just exactly what the hell May had gotten him into when she sent him out on this mission. Chapter 63, Father and Mother, Konoha Central Hospital. Hinata was terrified, as usual. No, not as usual. She had left that silly, scared little girl behind a long time ago. By the time she had come to train under Tsunade-sama, much of her crippling insecurity had already fled her, and soon afterwards whatever was left of that former shyness had been smacked out of her fairly quickly by her new teacher. But still, some of that old Hinata still remained. And now she was coming back, if only for a little bit. What did you say, Sasuke? Sasuke leaned back against the counter where she was preparing lab samples and crossed his arms. Your father wants to see you, he reiterated slowly, as if she was a little kid who didn't quite understand the concept of rhetorical questions yet. Your father wants to see you. Hinata gripped the little plastic container in her hand tightly, and took a few deep breaths. There was important information stored in those thin walls, and if she broke them or contaminated them in any way because she lost control of her strength, Tsunade would relegate her to band-aid duty for half a year. She turned away and feigned nonchalance. What father? What's a father? Fine. Hayashi Hyuga. Oh? Whatever for? The esteemed head of the great Hyuga clan asking after a clanless medic Nin trainee? Sounds like an odd waste of his time. I know you don't want to hear this, Hinata, but hiding from your family is going to do you more harm than good, Sasuke argued. I know you're not comfortable with talking to your father. Fine, Hayashi Hyuga. Now that was the understatement of the year. But the more you hide from him, the worse things are going to get. This is something serious enough that he's willing to put aside previous quarrels. However he might have treated you previously, he no longer considers you weak. Getting punched in the face tends to do that to arrogant jerks, Hinata mumbled, just barely loud enough for Sasuke to accidentally catch it. Beside her, Choji snorted into his fist, and hastily disguised it as a cough. And I don't understand how me staying away makes things worse. As long as the question of clan leadership is undecided, Hanabi can't get the caged bird seal. You don't have to move home, or even forgive your father for what he's done, Choji said. You just need to confront him one last time, and come to terms with it. Otherwise it's just going to keep eating away at you forever. You can't keep locking yourself away like this. Even if you're responsible enough to live on your own, doesn't mean you should. Why me? Lots of people live alone, Hinata said, not by choice. There was a dark look in Sasuke's eyes. One that Hinata didn't like. The last time she had seen that look, she had barely pulled him back from the brink then, but Hinata wondered just what would have happened if she hadn't had the good fortune to catch him before he left the village for good and got into trouble or caused his own trouble or whatever else might have come of it. She'd be able to hit him again, if need be, But causing a mess in the lab room wasn't a good idea. I'm still not comfortable with this idea. I know you're not. But as messed up as your family is, at least you have one. Hinata blinked. Now wasn't this just incredible? They should really put this down in a history book somewhere. The day where Sasuke Uchiha was the one playing therapist to his teammates, rather than the other way around. And she hated to admit it, but he had a point. I'm sorry. I've been selfish, she said, biting her lip. Sasuke shook his head. It's fine. Considering this was probably the first time in your life you tried doing something solely for yourself, I think that's forgivable. People have done worse things out of selfishness. You were only doing something you thought was best. Thank you. By the way, there's another reason why you should seriously go home, Hinata, Choji said. Hinata frowned. What is it? It's something my dad just told me, not too long ago. I'm not so sure I understand it completely myself, but he said it concerned all of us, actually. We're living in dangerous times here. We've all got to stick together. Speaking of which, Sasuke, you should really start making friends with the other clan heads. Even though you're younger than the rest of the clan heads, you technically have the same rank as they do as far as the clan system goes. Maybe even a little higher, since the Uchiha clan is still considered one of the noble four. What for? Sasuke raised an eyebrow. I don't know. But let's just say, one day, we might all have to pick sides, and it's not which village should we ally with this time around minus. Choji never ended up finishing his explanation, because at that moment one of the other hospital staff members poked her head into the room to inquire why Hinata was taking so long with the samples. When she saw Choji and Sasuke distracting her, she shooed them away. Hinata sighed. Great. It seemed she was going to have to ask someone else about this so-called councilman then. But she really didn't want to ask Hayashi Hyuga. She doubted he'd allow her to know such sensitive information, anyway, not until she regained his trust, seeing as she had broken some major clan rules by running away from home and all, which would be a long time in the making. In all honesty, Hinata wasn't sure if she should even bother with regaining Hayashi Hyuga's respect. The effort it would take seemed disproportionately large compared to the payoff. Maybe next time Choji invited them over to eat at his house, she'd talk to Chizuya Kimichi in private. She wished Hayashi Hyuga could be anyone else, other than Hayashi Hyuga, an undisclosed location. What the hell do you think you're doing, going after Ino Yamanaka? I thought I told you to leave them well alone. The Sandame demanded. Danzo placed an affronted hand over his heart. What? I totally am. What are you talking about? This is quite possibly the clumsiest attempt at a power grab you've done yet, the Sandame accused. You think that just because Fu is one of their own, the Yamanaka wouldn't kill him in his sleep anyway? There's no way they would ever accept a subversion from Fu, nor would they allow him to participate in anything important, so he's worthless as a spy. Just what are you trying to do? Oh, that boy. I take it Fu isn't having a very happy time right now, is he? Danzo asked. No, he isn't. What, are you trying to gain control over Gaara? That's not going to happen, you know. The Sandame's eye was twitching, to Danzo's great amusement. Don't deny that you're not up to something. You always are. Look, Danzo replied, you're overthinking this. He wanted to go home, so I let him. And why did you let him, now of all times? As I told you, I have released this skilled young man from my service as a reward for his years of dedication. He could have been making money doing A ranks. Instead, he stayed here to take care of a doddering, old, half-senile war veteran out of his own free will. Because he was a kind lad who respected his elders. You are making no sense. I haven't the foggiest idea what you're going on about. Look. I know you want to become Hokage. How on earth do you think this will help you? Trying to take control of a clan that will resist you until the end of time, a clan with powerful allies that will also resist you until the end of time? Is this some sort of distraction? That question is about as useless as your claiming Fu's return home was. If I'm telling the truth, then I wouldn't lie, and if I'm planning a distraction, I wouldn't tell you anyway. Besides me? Become Hokage? Maybe a few decades ago, but now? Danzo shook his head. The Sandame fumed silently. Danzo ignored his ire and continued. I'm too old. If there was one thing I learned from my failed attempt to part Shikaku Nara from his son, well, look at me now. Most of the men who remember me are dead, either in war or of old age. I have been secluded from the world for too long. The shinobi in service now barely remember me. Konoha needs someone it can unite under, someone it will willingly follow into battle, a strong leader. And that person obviously isn't an old, obscured, retired man like me. Oh, really? Then who? You're a big fat liar and you know it. Danzo covered his mouth and gasped mockingly. Why, Hiruzen, I am wounded. You should know by now that I love Konoha, and would never go against her will. I can hardly control who she chooses to rally behind, can I? All right then. Who do you think she'll rally behind? Well, I don't know. I don't know who's in the running yet. Danzo shrugged nonchalantly. I would prefer to back a strong candidate. One that can hold Konoha up against the might of the other nations. But I won't force anyone's hand. Konoha will ultimately choose who she chooses. It doesn't make sense to foist a leader no one wants, upon a fighting force heavily dependent on respect for the chain of command. Of course not, Hiruzen agreed sarcastically. The trick is to persuade everyone into liking and trusting the same person you like and trust to carry out your motives, isn't it? Danzo winked, and raised his glass in a toast. Ah, you know me too well, old friend, so I ask you again. Who is it? Who do you have, among your army of emotionally stunted man-children, who could possibly have the support of the people, the clans, and Tanyu? Danzo smirked. Why don't you tell me? Training Ground 3. Kakashi stared down at the remains of Ino's work contemplatively. Lightning chakra was a bit of a creepy thing, now that he thought about it. Or maybe it was him, for thinking to use it in this way. When he had learned about anatomy, the nervous system included, it had been for A and BU purposes, where to deal the most damage and where to elicit the most pain and whatnot. Not like Medicnine, who actually existed to help others. No, for all the people who had died so he could live, he hadn't changed one bit. His mother, his father, Obito, Rin Sensei, and he still did nothing but ruin people's lives. This technique that he was building her up to learn was truly meant for assassination, unlike Raikiri, which was mostly there to look cool and intimidate. It was rare that he'd ever need it, for in most circumstances there would always be something less chakra-intensive that did the same job. Giant ball of lightning or a kunai, that still meant dead, for most people. Raikiri was better for brute-forcing one's way out of a tough situation, breaking down walls, charging through similarly powerful jutsu, that sort of thing. But now that he could use teleportation to run away from most dangers, there was really little need for his first original technique anymore. Unless he was using it in tandem with the Hiraishin no Jutsu. Now that would be pretty awesome. Speaking of Ano, his student had stomped off to somewhere, presumably to get another watermelon to practice on. Impressive work, really. If he had given Naruto the same task and allowed him to use his wind nature, the boy would have taken twice the time even when working with 100 clones. Of course, that was just because this was a control exercise. Ino wouldn't have been able to pull off the massive bombardments Naruto could whip out with ease, as he was doing now. The problem is, water and fire already naturally combine to make steam, and fire and air naturally combine to make larger fires. Water and wind, on the other hand, don't necessarily form ice, which is dependent on a variety of factors, like temperature and pressure. Kakashi called out to him. So what do we do? The clones asked, staring down at their own hands. Kakashi shrugged. Keep practicing, I suppose, if only. Gone were the days where they could just train normally without having to think about anything else. It was one thing to be aware of the repercussions of a certain technique. It was another thing to traverse a secret society that could mercilessly mow down a man regardless of how well he trained. Kakashi flipped his marked kunai absent-mindedly, wondering what circumstance had in store for his team now. Unlike Minato-sensei, his were just the standard-issue ones that happened to have Hiraishin's seal branded into the handle. He couldn't bring himself to make it any more special than that. It felt unnatural to give himself a trademark for a technique someone else had made famous first. Shikamaru, he called. Something you need, sensei? Shikamaru asked, wandering over. Are you busy? Kakashi asked, relishing the strange look of consternation that came over his face. Ah, the best way to mess with the kid. To answer in the negative would mean accruing more work. To answer in the positive would mean to miss out on another opportunity. It was very rare that anyone ever got to see Shikamaru confused. Kakashi was glad he was one of the few people who could draw that reaction from him on a regular basis. No, Shikamaru finally said. Predictable. Great, Kakashi said, tossing a stack of papers at him. The same stack of papers Jiraiya had gleefully used to torture him with so long ago, when he'd first lost use of his Sharingan. New project for you. Have fun. Yes, he was an asshole, but Shikamaru's incredulous expression had so been worth it. The Yamanaka clan compound. And so, cousin dearest, Ino explained, scooping up the remains of the mashed vegetables she'd practiced her new lightning techniques on. That is the difference between a monkey's arse and a flying fuck. For looked like his world had just turned upside down. Seriously? Seriously. You've been missing out. But Danzo-sama always told me, Ino never got to hear what he was about to say, because he dropped to the ground, choking on his own tongue. It was only momentary, but when he looked up again, his face had darkened. He looked between her and the smashed taro dripping over the remains of a cracked pumpkin a few times, and then turned around and walked out of the shed silently. Ino picked up the purple goopy blob of taro and lobbed it at the back of Fu's head. Fu naturally ducked, as he was trained to do, which was also why she had followed up with a second handful in quick succession, aimed slightly below the first. The resulting wet slap was not a pleasant sound, but it wasn't as if Ino had any other suitable source of ammunition within grabbing distance. Unless you counted the mallet, the table, and the fertilizer shovel. But Ino was only looking to mildly annoy her cousin, not give him permanent brain damage. Not that he wasn't already a little touched up there. Fu turned around, furiously wiping at his hair. Ino, that was very highly unbecoming of a clan head. You should be ashamed of yourself. Imagine how Hayashi Hyuga might react if he could see such behavior. This is exactly why you need me to. Ino cut him off with another fistful of taro. You know, being a slow learner is also very highly unbecoming of a clan head's so-called advisor. You should be ashamed of yourself. It's barely been 5 minutes and already you've forgotten the difference between a monkey's arse and a flying fuck. What? No, that's not the point. The point is you need to shut up and have some fun every once in a while. Fu hesitated, and then attempted to catch himself, but it was too late. Ino had found the chink in his armor, and she wouldn't let go until she'd cracked the whole thing into pieces like porcelain in an earthquake. The Nara clan compound. With the way Kakashi-sensei was pushing us, it was obvious that there was something he was extremely worried about. Anyway, one of the most difficult things about Fuinjutsu was figuring out the method of fast application. Most seals took a long period of preparation, and so most users could only create their weapons in advance and deploy them when needed. To be able to call on a seal immediately was a rare skill that could only be developed through practice. It was not a matter of the individual sealer's technique. It was simply accomplished through development of one's own chakra control and force of will. The chakra control I had. The force of will, that was something I was still working on. In regards to sealing, it was more than just concentration. It was the ability to force something non-existent into existence. Physically painting a seal onto a surface was easy. There were many mediums for that, ink, water, even blood, but it took time. Precious time, not available in the midst of a fire-scorched field. That sort of Fuinjutsu was only effective if you had already taken care to draw it out ahead of time, then, because who wanted to lug around inkstones and brushes on a mission? But it's hard to predict exactly what sort of seals you'd need, for they changed in every given situation. Only very simple seals, like exploding tags, could be mass-produced. But what would the point of being a sealing master be if that was all I knew? To be able to just touch my hand to anything, and watch the seal form without the need of a medium, that was near impossible. But not completely impossible, because I'd seen Kakashi-sensei accomplish that with the Flying Thunder God technique. Of course, that was just one technique that, like exploding tags, could be reapplied in mass amounts. More complicated seals, I'd never heard of anyone in living memory performing those without preparation. Even the long-lost legends of Uzushio had little to say about that. Most people who performed these instantaneous seals could only do so for 1 or 2 memorized techniques. There was a limit to wholly mental technique execution. Sealing was just such a complicated thing. It had to be. Everything in life had a payoff. This was the price for opting to use such a powerful branch of the ninja arts. The sun had already gone down, and it was dark. I was feeling a bit tired today, so I decided I wouldn't be working any late nights tonight. My mom couldn't fault me for going to bed before 12 now, could she? She had, in fact, been trying to force me to go to bed at a reasonable time for a while now. My father and I are out in our backyard again. There is the campfire. The flickering flames, in the dark. Some logs. He brings out the rabbit. You know what to do, he says. Why is it always rabbits? I had asked. Not that I'd rather practice on a person, I added quickly. But I don't know, there's squirrels and other animals too. For some reason, I've found rabbits worked best, and given the nature of this technique, I've never bothered to investigate why, he had said, and left it at that. I close my eyes. Concentrate. My shadow strains itself against the barrier, then it breaks, pitch black, swimming through foggy ink. I had no senses. I couldn't see, couldn't feel, couldn't smell or hear or taste. But I could still tell what was where, as if it was a part of me. Sensing things, feeling and seeing and hearing them, smelling and tasting them, as if I was them, and not myself. Like knowing your own face, without a mirror, not needing to look at it because you already are. I am the rabbit. I see myself, as the rabbit sees me, two sets of eyes, looking back into each other, like two mirrors facing each other. Endless reflection. Then the rabbit becomes a woman. Her hair is long and white, as are her eyes, which, like her face, are blank and pale, as if she is blind, but in reality, she can see through this darkness better than anyone. I know those eyes. We almost went to war for them, once. In the middle of her forehead, a third eye opens vertically. A rosy red dot in the middle of her forehead, like a spot of blood. She opens her mouth, and starts screaming something. But no sound comes out, for we are in a vacuum. I hear nothing. Just a mouth, open and empty, with no air to catch. Desperate to be heard, she points down. I looked, but I see nothing except the black abyss. My shadow is still split, and the black fog curls around my vision. My eyes are human eyes, they can see nothing. Just the endless, pitch black darkness. She screams again. Still nothing. I have no senses here. I could understand nothing, besides myself, and her. I am the rabbit. She is the rabbit. I am she. So even though I cannot hear, I know what she is saying, because I am saying the same thing. Come back, come back. Where are you, my other half? Where are you? My eyes snapped open, and for a moment, I didn't know what was going on. For a moment, I thought I was still trapped in that sea of freezing nothingness. Then I recollected myself, and realized that no, I was fine. I was in the real world, safe and sound in bed, in my room, at home, like I usually was at this time of night when I wasn't pulling a late night. I hadn't gone anywhere, I had never left. It was just a weirdly specific nightmare. Yeah, that was it. That had to be it. I rolled over, closed my eyes, and tried to sleep again. No luck. The lights were off, the air was warm, and yet I was freezing to death. I lied. I wouldn't be sleeping tonight. Tonight would be a late night. I kicked off the covers and headed over to my desk, where my sealing notebooks were waiting. I didn't know what else to do. I couldn't practice any of my ninjutsu at this time of night, and I didn't want to do anything Kage-main related right now. So, Fuinjutsu it was. I thanked Kakashi-sensei for giving me this third mode of focus. It didn't take me long to settle down and find my rhythm for completing this next particular set of sealing exercises. Though every seal was different for every situation, there were still certain similarities in the overall process that could be exploited. Measure, design, test, repeat. Measure, design, test, repeat. The chakra sources ran down my network of stripes of conducting ink, like electricity from a battery across a circuit of components. I couldn't go back to sleep. This was all I had to distract myself with. I thought you were going to sleep early today. Without looking up, I answered, I thought you did, too. I can hear you thinking, my dad smirked. It's very loud. I raised an eyebrow. Didn't know you were secretly a Yamanaka. Go to sleep, Shikamaru. He turned off the light, but I could not. Had I been like my father, sleep would have been all too easy. But I was not my father, as much as I wanted to be. The whole time, I had been calling out for my mother, except that my mother had black hair, so it really didn't make sense. Chapter 64, Red Dawn Desert Sun. The Yamanaka clan compound. I glared down at the pile of paper that had arrived at the Yamanaka doorstep from the past week alone. Ever since Ino had formally taken on the title of clan head, all these random people thought they could take advantage of her to get a claw into one of Konoha's clans. Advertisements, debtors, people claiming to be long-lost relatives and deposed princes of faraway lands begging for help. At least, thanks to our connections from our past missions in Tanyu, and Ino's new position as a clan head, we were now in the loop about the current drama more than ever. Gossip was always fun, and carried plenty of important information besides. So I was thinking, said Ino, Fu seems like such a nice person, even if he's a little awkward. It seems mean to alienate him just because he's been away for so long. I've been thinking to spend a little more time with him. You know, like a good cousin should do. Wow, you're such a good cousin, Ino, Naruto said. It's almost like you're being nice just for the sake of being nice. People don't do that? Ino asked, twirling her hair around a finger. I thought the world was made of sunshine. The fairy tales say that, so it must be true. In general, Konoha and Tanyu alike were dealing with the issue of the next Hokage. So far, Jiraiya and Tsunade didn't want to do it. Everyone of consequence was generally putting their weight behind Kakashi-sensei, and everyone in the loop was waiting for Danzo Shimura to come out with one of his nasty power plays at the last second. Our lives were all a power play. A nasty power play, by people older and more powerful than we were. People who gave us no control, no information, Not even a tiny hint of what they were planning to do, and yet expected our lives in return. It was not enough that they commanded our movements on the battlefield. No, they wanted everything, down to the very choices we made. I knew my father and her father had been up to something. Something involving Danzo, the attempted Uchiha thing, and God knows how many other clan heads, and I would find out soon. That was a promise. You know, Ino, the fairy tales are all correct. The world is made of sunshine. Sunshine is what producers use for photosynthesis. And then everyone eats the plants, or the things that eats the plants, said Kakashi-sensei. And the things that aren't alive are still made of leftover stardust from when the solar system was forming. So we are made of sunshine. Wow. So even people murdering each other and stuff is like, just sunshine doing its job. Life is death, what can I say? You're not even helping. Naruto accused, two of his clones emptying a large pile of scrolls on top of Kakashi-sensei's head. This isn't even a D rank, because it was unfair that I should be left ignorant of the facts. Not when my own life was in the air because of it. Not when my friends' lives were teetering on the edge of a cliff because of it. Danzo was taking advantage of Ino's father's death to weaken this missing link, and Gaara, I hadn't forgotten him. The Suna Jinchuriki was now in Konoha's power, but not really. He was in the Yamanaka clan's power. Even without my father letting things slip at the dinner table, it was still obvious to me, because even though he was under the care of Jiraiya and Yamato now, his first friend was and always would be Ino's father. I was no expert in psychology, for strategy was my forte, but a boy in his situation, he was a foreigner, he was shy, he had difficulty in social situations, the verdict was obvious from the start. He'd be more likely to bond with individuals than vague ideas, like Konoha. From the few conversations I'd had with him, he struck me as a boy who gave his loyalty to whoever would love him, even if it meant his own self-destruction. No doubt if he had to choose between Konoha, a village that he wasn't quite used to yet, and his personal friends, he'd choose the individuals. Had it been Danzo Shimura who had picked him up instead of Ino's father, I didn't want to think of the possibilities. Yeah, Kakashi-sensei, why are you even here? Another Naruto clone demanded. Shikamaru, go on, tell him how useless he's being. Ino Yamanaka was a girl my age who was still grieving her father's death even if on the outside she was no longer crying, and she had more power in the palm of her hand than some shinobi villages could ever dream of wielding. For the majority of shinobi villages were now currently without any Jinchuriki. We were all wasting so much time with this infighting, and here the Akatsuki were, picking us off one by one. All I knew was, I refused to be involved in a game where I wasn't even allowed to play properly. Shikamaru, what? I blinked. Oh yeah? Kakashi-sensei, if you don't want to help us with Ino's mail, that's fine, but don't sit in the middle of the table we're trying to sort mail on, please. But large piles of paper are so comfortable, he protested. You are literally sitting on top of the stuff we haven't even read yet. Naruto growled. Move your fat butt. The injustice of this infuriated me. On the battlefield, we had certain freedoms. Who to spare, who to kill, how to execute a plan. That was the way the chain of command in Konoha worked. The upper echelons of command told us what to do, but the individual shinobi had the power to determine how to execute their missions, depending on their skill level. It was expected that a jonin, for example, would have the maturity and intelligence needed to form a coherent and working plan according to a situation, and provide the desired end result that might fit into some piece of a larger plan. To each man his own capacity. We contributed as we saw fit. I resent that, Kakashi-sensei pouted. My butt is so not fat. You're skinny, bony, but then. Just move. But this was not the field. This was within the walls of Konoha itself. And even here we were not safe. Even here, there were people affecting our very lives, playing us like we were pieces of a game with so many ridiculous rules and exceptions, a game where no one won. Because unlike in the field, they did not even tell us that we were being commanded. Ino was in danger, and I could do nothing to help her in my current position. The catch, of course, being my current position. I could fix that. It would take time, but I could fix that. Hey, Shikamaru, do you want to hear a riddle? No. Oh, come on, Kakashi-sensei grinned. You're supposed to be smart. The brightest student of your generation, and possibly the brightest Nara in the history of the clan. I'm not a fresh-faced academy graduate anymore. I'm not falling for that again. Well, you're no fun. Scared my riddles are too difficult, are we? I narrowed my eyes. I can solve a difficult problem just fine, thank you very much, otherwise I wouldn't be studying Fuinjutsu. But this is different. It's impossible for me to puzzle out the jokes you toss at me. You can't expect me to solve a nonsensical problem with no solution. Kakashi-sensei pursed his lips behind his mask. That's no excuse. Life is a nonsensical problem with no solution, and you don't see me complaining. The Aburame clan compound. Remind me, why are we here again? Some sighed, picking a bug off the sleeve of her coat. Though she respected Shibi Aburame as a person, she simply couldn't stand the nasty, clingy smell of insects' pheromones. Those fumes were nearly impossible to wash out. Then came the issue of the other artificial chemicals the Aburame clan dealt in. Her nose couldn't stand any of that stuff. It's too risky for any clan within Inoshikacho to host these meetings anymore, and the Hyuga clan is too high profile to be involved in this. Shikaka Nara told her. If you would like to offer up a private meeting place at your own home, then by all means. Some snorted. The great Hayashi-sama would complain. Choza Akimichi cut in before Hayashi Hyuga could snap a reply to that, and thankfully, an argument was avoided. How boring. Now is not the time to be fighting among ourselves. Inoichi Yamanaka was an integral part of our circle, and now he is dead. Though we still have connections to Ibiki Marino, mostly through the Suna Jinchuriki currently under the care of his family, the man does not have access to everything. ANBU TNI is only a small faction of ANBU intelligence, and Danzo Shimura has already installed his own workers into that empty position, no doubt. I know that even without anyone telling me, Hayashi Hyuga said. The question is, what are we going to do about it? We can no longer ask the Yamanaka to contribute to this cause. Santa Yamanaka is stretched thin and Inoichi has left behind his 14-year-old daughter to run the clan. She is dealing with enough as it is. If anyone else in the circle was surprised they did not show it. Tsum, for one, had expected Hayashi Hyuga to say something like the Yamanaka are useless rather than that more tactful explanation. Well, maybe the man had finally learned some manners. Who knew? She wasn't going to look a gift horse in the mouth. Currently, the priority is finding out who exactly Danzo Shimura supports for the position of 5th Hokage, said Shikaku. Someone without prior name or face could rise to control the clans, as had been the case multiple times in the past. A good case being the 4th Hokage, and a bad case being whatever puppets the councilman was inserting into vacancies in power at this point in time. And, as the Uchiha clan had learned the hard way, even things not punishable by law of man, like hubris, were punishable in the kangaroo courts of the gods. The Uchiha clan. They'd been so close to figuring out the puzzle. And then Inoichi had up and died. He'd been the lead researcher in this thing, and now that was one resource gone. Whatever he had learned regarding the Uchiha clan with his snooping about the ANBU files had died with him. A ridiculous stroke of bad luck and worse timing. The gods were screwing with them, too. It was a sad, but true reality. The clans really didn't have as much power as they seemed to have in the eyes of non-clan shinobi. They were subject to the laws of the governing bodies as much as the next man. In fact, the regulation was even stricter on the clans because they were easily identifiable bodies. The frontrunner is Kakashi Hatake, some said, and he has the backing of the 2 remaining Sannin, either of whom want the job themselves. Who the hell does Shimura have up his sleeve to beat that? That question is just asking for trouble, Shikaka muttered. He could still do a lot of things to discredit Hatake. He's brilliant, but unstable, and unhealthily devoted to his students. A very easy point of attack would be to exalt Hatake's skill in the field and then at the last moment point out that said skill doesn't always translate to being a proper Hokage, whose real job lies in negotiation tactics and cost-benefit analysis. I do not doubt Kakashi Hatake's skill in negotiation, Chuza added, but you are correct. His internal cost-benefit analysis heuristics are inherently skewed. They completely break down when his students are involved. He cares for his comrades to the loss of objectivity. Still a better choice than whoever Danzo has up his sleeve, some sighed, but I agree. It would be all too easy for someone to point out the debacle with Sakumo Hatake and make some suggestions that the apple does not fall far from the tree, as well as the trouble with Orochimaru, Hayashi added. He is still unable to use his Sharingan or any ninjutsu. Even if he has learned the Hiraishin no Jutsu, that is not enough to be Hokage. That may not be a problem soon enough. I dare say Tsunade and you daughter will have him fixed by then, Shikaka said slyly. Hayashi narrowed his eyes. What is that supposed to mean? Some smirked. Oh, I don't know. Maybe if you paid more attention to your disappointing daughter you might realize just how wrong you are. I'm surprised that I know more than you, to be honest. For someone who professes to be so superior to a clan of smelly dogwalkers. Don't bait him, Chuza hissed. The point is, his personality is a bigger target than any physical shortcomings. You can fix injuries given enough time and talent. The mind, on the other hand, more tricky, Shikaka intervened. And Inoichi Yamanaka is gone, was the unspoken sentence at the end of that. But what are we going to do about it? Hayashi demanded, still glaring at Sam. It is all well and good to point out Hataki's shortcomings, but how do we ensure that someone else can't use them against us? Danzo can't trap us if we've already trapped ourselves, Shibi said quietly, and Sam jumped. He had been so quiet the whole time that she'd forgotten he was here, and they were all sitting in his house. How embarrassing. What do you mean by that? Hayashi Hyuga demanded. If we let the daimyo know about all these issues ahead of time, we have initiative. We have the ability to spin it to our advantage. What is mental instability? Creativity and thinking outside the box. What is dangerously sentimental? Unfailing loyalty. And whatever mistakes Tsukumo Hatake made, young Kakashi was the one to find his corpse. If you had such a traumatizing childhood experience, why would you make the same choices that led to that? Shibi asked. Why is this important? Because if someone else brings up these same criticisms later, they will have less effect. Hayashi blinked. That's not a bad idea, he admitted, which, coming from him, was like a standing ovation. Unless they've already got there before us, Sam muttered. True, but psychologically, the best time to start convincing people would be a few weeks from now. Too early and people forget or become persuaded by the most recent argument. Too late, and they've already made up their mind, Shikaku explained. The best time to start convincing the daimyo himself would be in a few months. He is dependent on his advisors and will listen to the loudest one, though his indecisiveness is born more out of cleverness than weakness. After all, if his vassals believe he is easily manipulated, they'll spend more time trying to overthrow each other than him. Do we even have people in Tanyu, though, is the question, Sam pointed out. Shikaka and Chuza grinned. Of course we do. Whose gossip-mongering daughter do you think publishes that insufferable tabloid that's all the rage in the capital right now? Hayashi Hyuga spluttered, face turning from pale to red to purple, and hastily shoved a very familiar garishly colored, rolled-up magazine deeper into his sleeves. The Hokage's office. The Sandaime had not been much older than she was now when he had begun his first term as the leader of a ninja village. The Suna girl before him seemed intelligent enough, though only time would tell if she would survive for long in this world of theirs. Somehow, he didn't doubt it. That old Kaja Onoki was still around after all. He would have to tread carefully around her. Accidents in the courts of daimyo were rarely as simple as they seemed. Father and sons, killed so soon one after another, and now a different relative ascending to that place. It was obvious that she had been involved in that particular little scheme. From how smugly she was behaving right now, she wasn't bothering to hide her involvement at all. She was proud of what she had done, which, he supposed, was somewhat clever. As a new entry to the circle of Kage, inexperience would be against her. Not just her lack of tenure, but also her age in her home village. The circle of Kage had worked fairly predictably for the past 3 generations. They always did their best to tear the new one apart. She would have to work twice as hard as her predecessors to get half the acknowledgement until a new Kage came along, which was going to be Konoha, most likely. No one knew what Kiri was up to. In this case, asserting her power and authority might be more advantageous to her than not, even if the normal fare for shinobi would be to hide one's true abilities. Then there was also the matter of her being a girl. In the world of shinobi, you underestimated no one, least of all the helpless little girls. Even Onoki wasn't that stupid. They all recognized her as a potential threat, as trained shinobi should, and then they would use whatever they could against her, whatever made her different, to discredit her. They could not fool each other into thinking that Temari was harmless or inferior, but that didn't mean they couldn't fool the uneducated masses. Propaganda was a powerful tool, especially in business and war. The constant fight for missions and customers was as cutthroat as what they actually did in the field. Kazakage-sama, the Sandaime said. I trust you found your way here well as I could. You should take better care of your roads, Hokage-sama, Temari said. They're overgrown with weeds. Oh, well, sunflowers. Sunflowers? I'm not kidding. The whole road is clogged with those hideous things. How terrible, that a skillful kunoichi like you cannot deal with a few sunflowers, the Sandaime grinned. Temari did not react. Let's spare the pleasantries. You know why I'm here, she said instead. Ah. Yes. The question of the Ichibi Jinchuriki. I know you have him here, in Konoha. I want him back, the Sandaime smirked. Your Jinchuriki, or your brother? Temari stiffened, but she kept her face impassive. She was talented, for her age, but she had a long way to go before she could keep up with him. Both would be preferable, she answered. The Sandaime stirred his tea. And if you had to choose one? Temari paled for a few seconds, possibly contemplating the situation that Gaara was no longer alive, that they might have killed her brother, and resealed the one-tailed beast into some other child. But just as quickly, she regained her resolve, and replied with greater furor than before. Both or no dice. Even if your brother is not the same man you once knew, he belongs with Suna. That is all I have to say. I have nothing more to add, Temari said curtly, hiding none and yielding none. The Sandaime hummed. I will do what I can to set up a meeting between the two of you. But be warned, he is very different from the homicidal psychopath you sent to our Chunin exams, and I will do what I can to convince the Council of Suna to lend you our full support against this Akatsuki threat that you brought up in that last letter. But be warned, they, in their age and infinite wisdom, might end up convincing me otherwise. Then I believe we'll just have to try harder, won't we, Miss Temari? After all, Suna did sign a treaty with Konoha, unless you mean to say your word means nothing. An acting Kazekage signed that while under duress, not me. Technically speaking, as an entirely different leader with an entirely different political agenda, I have no obligation to follow through with that promise. Secondly, what can you do to me in order to ensure that I do keep it? You need our cooperation more than ever now. I recommend you do not antagonize our rocky relationship any further. She angrily stood up and pushed in her chair. Thanks for the tea. The Sandaime Hokage watched her leave. He reached for a match and lit his pipe. Then he spent the next half an hour having a nice long smoke, which was much more than was necessary to satisfy his nicotine addiction. Amigekure, Zabuza and Haku had settled in quite quickly. That was good. Itachi spared the demonic statue of the outer path one last glance before he went to join Kisame in the sitting room. No one really knew what Pain and Madara were up to. In fact, most of the Akatsuki didn't even know Madara at all. He and Kisame, obviously, as they had been approached directly by the masked man, but most of the rest had been recruited by fellow Akatsuki members. It wasn't hard to guess, though, what all the tailed beasts were going to be used for. Bijou chakra was notoriously corrosive simply based on their sheer power density. It was why the tailed beasts existed in the first place, to give all of that deadly power a controlled construct. If all of that energy was released all at once, it would be a disaster. Incompatible chakra everywhere. It was bad enough, between two normal humans. That was why so many of Orochimaru's experiments died after being given the cursed seal, though to call that man a human would be stretching the definition to its absolute limit. With Bijou, there was no chance of survival whatsoever. While there were rare people who were compatible with one Bijou, there was no one on Earth compatible with all of them simultaneously. Well, maybe the Sage of Six Paths, but he was dead. Itachi would have to look more into that story. Non-combative civilians, and untrained children, who had underdeveloped chakra coils, would be unaffected. But otherwise, everything that used chakra in large amounts would be poisoned. The more chakra a shinobi used, the more assimilated they would be to that power, the more aware their body would be of the sensation of it leaving them, and thus the more they would suffer. Every pathway in their body would shut down, bit by bit. That would include them, the Akatsuki. But that was exactly what they wanted, because without chakra, the shinobi way of life would crumble to pieces. And without shinobi, the system would not exist. So Kisame and he were allowed to know, because Nagato and Konan trusted them to continue helping the Akatsuki attain their goal, even after knowing that said goal would result in all of their, most likely, very painful deaths. Because that was what it was. The Akatsuki was literally a massive suicide mission for what they believed to be the greater good of the world. But for those like Deidara, who was too flighty for his own good, or Sasori, Haiden and Kakuzu, all of whom relied on chakra to retain their immortality, they would never agree to giving up their power. No, only those who were capable of the greatest sacrifices would be allowed to partake in the true secrets of the Akatsuki. Sometimes, on very dark nights, Itachi would lie awake, thinking, wondering if the doctrine of the Akatsuki was really worth it. Were the deaths of all those not-so-innocent people worth exchanging for peace on Earth? Was the prospect of no more war worth the genocide of an entire group of humans? On the darker nights, he'd answer yes if I was allowed to die with them. On his darkest nights, he'd even consider switching sides, but only for a little bit. Only a fleeting dark thought. Then it always came back to no. Sasuke used chakra. Sasuke would die. Konoha would die. And even if every shinobi on Earth was slaughtered, even if chakra was removed from the equation altogether, man would still make war upon his fellow man. That was just the way of the world, if chakra wasn't around, humans would simply figure out some other way to murder each other. All they would be doing would be adding to the bloodshed. And then where would they be? No better than the system they had claimed to replace. So Itachi only pretended, just a little bit, that he agreed with Nagato. It was worth it, sacrificing his loyalties for a few seconds, in order to gain the trust of something greater. Chapter 65, Stamped and Sealed. The Hyuga clan compound. In all honesty, Hinata hadn't been quite sure what moving back home would change. She talked to Niji and Hanabi more, true, but as for the rest, there really wasn't much difference. The other branch family members continued to go about their business as always. There was that careful politeness present, but little else. Even after all of her training with Tsunade, the only reason why they even looked twice at her was because of her station of birth. On the bright side, Hayashi Hyuga was no longer regarding her with slightly more respect than a piece of dirt on the ground. Before, he only spoke to her if he had orders, or if he had found yet another thing about her training or behavior he wanted to criticize. Now, he was just distant. He did not speak to her at all. He regarded her with the same exact wariness as everyone else in the compound except for Niji and Hanabi. This new attitude was a small step above the blatant disappointment it used to be, but it was a step above nonetheless. Hinata liked to think it was because she was no longer jumping in fright at every single little detail like some annoying little mouse. Dealing with innards and blood on a daily basis had numbed her to the worst of psychologically scarring things, and her daily work in the hospital, where very specific and clear-cut vocabulary was mandatory, unless you wanted to kill someone by mixing up similar-sounding organs, had also taught her to dish out orders at a loud volume without stuttering. She was useful now, not weak. It didn't change all those years prior, though. There was still a sharp divide between Hayashi Hyuga and her, and there with Hayashi Hyuga was icy at best. The air seemed to solidify every time the two of them even passed each other in the hallway, and only Hanabi's presence would be able to diffuse it. In a sense, though, she thought she might have impressed him with that. 1 year ago, that level of negative sentiment would have caused her to cry or faint. Now, she could stand up to it just fine, and deal it back in equal proportion. Wasn't this what the man had wanted to prepare her for? Wasn't that how a future head of the Hyuga clan should act? Wasn't she perfectly executing the old policy of how they were supposed to deal with other clans? Hold your ground and don't budge an inch, regardless of how many concessions you might have to make? In any event, it had come as a shock to her when one of the maids announced that the clan head Hayashi Dano was requiring her presence, alone. The only time they ever interacted formally was at the dinner table, where everyone else also sat. If not, then he would at least have Hanabi or Niji there as a third party. But Hinata supposed they couldn't avoid each other forever. One day, he was going to have to name the clan heir. Her former weakness had been the only thing that had kept Hanabi from getting the stamp on her forehead. That excuse had been wiped from the slate the day she broke the floorboards with Hayashi Hyuga's face. Now, there was a new excuse, that she had abandoned the Hyuga, and was not stable yet, and that they weren't sure if they could trust her with running the clan. Hinata was completely fine with that. Relished in it, even. As long as she purposely continued to give the clan elders a reason to think she was not yet ready to be clan head, she could keep Hanabi safe. But she also had to continue to give them hope that she was fit for the job, which she did well, since Tsunade hadn't fired her yet, or she would be sealed in Hanabi's stead. It was a delicate balancing act, keeping them indecisive, while she figured out what to do. Hayashi Dano, she said, bowing. Hayashi Hyuga, on his part, was not offended at her not referring to him as family, for he did not call her that in return. He acknowledged her presence, attached the proper suffix, and poured her tea as she sat down. We both overreacted, he said. There was no emotion in his tone. He spoke like a robot, as if there was someone else on the other end, feeding him lines on what to say. Hinata wanted to laugh at the mental image, but she didn't. Yes. We did. I apologize for my lack of conduct, she said instead. Painfully formal. That ought to satisfy him. As do I, Hayashi Hyuga said. I won't give up my ninjutsu, Hinata said purposefully. For his part, Hayashi Hyuga tried to pretend he didn't know what she was talking about. Many Hyuga are healers. It is an honorable art. I mean the things Sasuke taught me, too, Hinata said, although it was likely she would never execute them in battle. The ninjutsu he taught her had been low-level, barely useful, and not so much meant for use as much as it was meant to make a statement. Hayashi Hyuga knew this, but he did not react except for a slight angry twitch of his mouth, which he suppressed. Finally, he conceded, but he did not budge an inch, as per the old saying. I am not a Yamanaka. I cannot reverse something which has already been learned. but do not use this as an excuse to give up your clan training. I still expect you to learn all of our techniques." Hinata nodded. "That is reasonable, Morty. I don't suppose we can forget this ever happened, can we?" Hinata asked. "No," Hayashi Hyuga said curtly. Hinata couldn't help the disappointment in her tone. "I thought not," Hayashi Hyuga shrugged, aloof as ever, "but we can pretend. The road to healing a broken relationship is neither short nor easy. Sometimes either parties make it to the end. Sometimes the end is not what it was before, a state of half-unity, of neither being enemies or friends, simply two people bound by an ever-present state of awkwardness." It would be years before Hinata Hyuga and Hayashi Hyuga finally forgave each other, before they finally saw one another as something other than oppressive clan head and disappointing heir. Some would say better late than never, but in their case it was probably better never than late. Boardroom 23. Here she was. The meeting with her brother that the Hokage had promised. Temari hadn't expected the old man to uphold his end of the bargain, so prepared to go to war with the old coot again, but then he had, and she was left wondering just what he was up to. These Konoha types. Honorable to the end, as far as it suited them, but if it meant being able to see her brother again, then she'd take what she had. Gaara had grown into an impressive young man, Temari decided, a bit of grudging respect for Konoha building up in her. Whatever they had done, he no longer looked as sleep-deprived or insane as he once had. He had never been a particularly cute child. Sure, as family, it was her obligation to find him cute, but she knew that from an objective standpoint he had not been very physically impressive. Already small and sunken from a premature birth, the influence of a demon and the resulting insomnia, combined with a fighting style that hardly used any movement, had left him looking weak and malnutritioned. He was not weak, of course, but he certainly looked it, except for that perpetual murderous look in his eyes. Now, however, he looked a little more human. His eyes no longer displayed any outward malice, and he no longer resembled one of Kankuro's minimalistic puppets. Though, perhaps that was just a part of him growing up. He'd gotten taller and filled out. And she supposed he was better groomed. Someone had been regularly trimming his hair. Back in Suna, no one had dared to approach him with sharp pointy objects in hand except for their late father, and of course the old man had had better things to do than play barbershop. At the very least Konoha had treated him well, not tortured him, or whatever. Though they could have done without the ugly brown hair dye that made him look like a useless fire country civilian. Temari didn't know if she was disappointed by that or not. It was harder to hate Konoha for taking her brother away, once they'd made it clear that they hadn't done him harm. But what had she expected from an old softy like Sarutobi, anyway? "I'm glad to see you are well, Gaara." "As am I," he responded politely. His expression was guarded. "I've missed you." He stared back blankly. Temari pushed further. "I've made arrangements for you to come home." "You? And why would I return to a village that has given me nothing but pain? And how dare you call yourself my sister, and Kankuro my brother, when all I have known is isolation? Granted, I don't blame you for that. I was a poor sibling myself, but please don't insult me by trying to use familial ties to take me home, if Suna is even my home." Temari felt herself reel. She was shocked. Of all the ways she'd expected Gaara to react, it had never been like this. She'd played out this scene in her mind so many times, wondering how it could go in so many different ways. "Gaara, you are a citizen of Suna. Here you will be but a second-rate captive, a prisoner of war, a spoil of victory. That doesn't say much about Suna, does it? Here, they seem to treat their prisoners of war better than Suna treats its own citizens. Gaara, I know we haven't had the best of relationships, but I really want to mend things between us and make you happy. If you want to make me happy, then let me stay here. Please. I want to stay. I don't want to go back to a place where everyone shuns me and thinks I'm a monster. I just want people to not know what I am. I want people to treat me like I'm normal." And just like that, all former positive sentiment she had been considering about Konoha flew right out the window. They hadn't hurt him. No, they'd done worse than that. They'd twisted him. Reached into the depths of his mind and twisted him, brainwashed him into forgetting his home and loving Konoha in its stead. This total invasion of his person, to Temari, that was more unforgivable than any beating they might have given him. Whatever connection he'd had with sand, it was gone now. She was too furious to even speak, too furious to even put into words what she had just witnessed. The Hokage was waiting for her with a smug smile on his face as she stormed out of the meeting room. "You've destroyed him," she snarled. "Destroyed? Funny word you wind country people have for kindness and happiness," the Hokage said. "That was my brother," Temari thought, fuming. "You've gone one step too far, old man. Do not underestimate me. I am Sabaku no Temari, oldest child of the 4th Kazekage, and you've just pissed off the wrong person. Jiraiya's house. It was a clear night. There were no clouds or stars, only the blood moon hanging low in the sky. Today's Shikamaru had figured out how to bend his shadows in the exact ceiling pattern used in explosive tags. The results were, well, explosive. Ceiling was so cool, but it took a really long time to do because you needed all the special ink and the right kind of chakra-conducting surfaces to put it on. At least for beginners. Obviously Jiraiya and his mom and dad and Kakashi-sensei could make seals with just a touch of their hands. Shikamaru was almost there, if he could do it with his shadows. Naruto was still in his phase of absolutely wild ninjutsu, but maybe one day he'd manage it too and drag Ino along for the ride. He was excitedly recounting all his stories back to Gaara, who had come over for a sleepover because Yamato had some sort of mission. They no longer needed to hide the rings around his eyes now that he was getting enough sleep, and so Ino got really mad and she totally just exploded a freaking rock into gravel using only her bare hands, and even Kakashi-sensei was all freaked out, because even though he's a lightning type and he's already used to Earth being weak against lightning, he never expected Ino to figure out how to do that so quickly. But that's just Ino for you because she's awesome at chakra control. Why am I telling you this? You already know all that. You hang out with Ino all the time. And anyway, what's up with you, Gaara? You're looking a bit down. Gaara blinked. Oh, come on, man, you can tell me. I've been talking way too much and I feel a little bad that I've been talking over you, you know? Oh. I saw my sister. Today. Gaara trailed off. Naruto blinked. Temari? Kazekage Temari? Yes. She wasn't mean to you, was she? No. Oh. So then, what's wrong? She wanted me to come back to Suna with her. Naruto blinked. On one hand, Gaara going back to Suna might make it harder for Danzo to get his hands on him, so at least he'd be safe from that. On the other hand, this was freaking Suna, with Temari as the Kazekage, where he was already an outsider, at least in Konoha, with people not knowing much of his childhood rampages, and with Jiraiya, Yamato, and the Yamanaka clan all looking after him. What did you tell her? Naruto asked. Gaara fiddled with his thumbs. I told her no, that I liked it here better. I'm happy. Naruto tried to smile at him, but worry for his new friend's safety as well as the looming thought of war made his mouth stiffer than he would have liked. After all, this wasn't just any offended sister. This was an offended sister with a penchant for lifelong grudges, a militant stubbornness, and more importantly, control over an entire shinobi village that absolutely hated all of their guts. Well, I'm glad you're happy. But I can't imagine that she was. No. She was very angry. I might have told her off more harshly than I intended. Gaara shifted. Maybe he was thinking about war. Maybe he wasn't. He seemed less bothered about the potential threat of mass violence, having sadly become far too accustomed to chaos and lost at far too young an age even by the standards of their world, than about his newfound emotional freedom. I tried to be polite, but then she acted like nothing was wrong and I got angry. Naruto shrugged. Everyone has a right to be angry. Gaara stared at the ceiling, musing. Normally, when I get angry, the monster inside me comes out. People get hurt. And die. Buildings get destroyed. But nothing happened, or else we'd have heard of it by now, Naruto pointed out. It's still a rather novel feeling. Being able to get angry and still be myself. Something bothering you? She said that I was still a prisoner, and a hostage. That I could pretend for as much as I liked, but in the end I'd never truly belong here. Gaara rolled over in his sleeping bag and turned his sad eyes to face Naruto, and in them, Naruto could see exactly how his life could have been so much more miserable. Had his father been less careful in his sealing, had his mother's bloodline been less adapted to the Kyuubi's chakra, had the Kyuubi been more malicious than merely grumpy, had the people in charge been less competent at making reasonable decisions, that could very well have been him. Don't flatter yourself, idiot, the Kyuubi grumbled. As if your competence could have permitted you to accomplish anything grander than defacing the Hokage monument. Shut up, that was an amazing prank and you know it, Naruto smirked. You're just jealous you didn't think of it yourself. I'm not going to lie to you, Gaara. I don't know how the rest of Konoha thinks, or if you'll ever learn to enjoy every single local custom, but those of us who know you personally are smart enough to care and strong enough to handle ourselves. That's true, Gaara muttered. I suppose I didn't really ever belong in Suna either. At least here, people don't know me enough to care if I don't belong. But she's still family. She wants me around. I don't know about Kankuro. Or any of the others. I don't know. She actually wanted me back, though. That's got to mean something. Naruto answered his unspoken question. Everyone wants us for power, no use pretending otherwise. It's just going to get you killed. Maybe she does care about you as her brother, though you shouldn't act like she doesn't also want a Jinchuriki for Suna again. So what should I do? Maybe you should talk to them, properly. Though, when we are at peace, obviously. Now is probably not the best time to leave the village. All the others, they're really gone, aren't they? Gaara asked morosely. It's just us two now. Actually, I think Kumo's still got one left. And maybe Kiri, although no one really knows what they're up to nowadays, Naruto shrugged. You get to know more than me. No one ever tells me anything. Don't we have any plans? I don't know what's going to happen to you or me or anyone, Naruto snorted. Oh come on, Gaara. This is a shinobi village. Somebody, somewhere always has a plan. Gaara curled in on himself. Inoichi had one. He's still dead. And Naruto didn't have a single clue what to say, because what the hell do you say to that? The Akimichi clan compound. Teams 10 and 7 had always been on good terms, but ever since that awful fight against Haiden and Kakuzu, there was something stronger between us. I don't know how to describe it. Camaraderie forged in mutual trauma, maybe. In our earlier genin days, inter-team relationships were more dependent on our sensei's relationships. Our team had trained more with Gai sensei's team, while I presume Asuma sensei's team trained more with Kurenai sensei's team. Now, even those times were distant as our skills grew more specialized, though the amount of time we found for pointless and not so pointless conversation remained the same as ever. Therefore, it was not unusual to see Sasuke or Hinata milling about Choji's house. I couldn't help but notice that as our visits got rarer and rarer, theirs grew more frequent. Not that I held any resentment towards them for it. They were his teammates, and both of them preferred the happy coziness of the Akimichi clan compound to the ghostly emptiness of the nearly abandoned Uchiha district, or the awkward austerity of the Uchiha main house. Certainly both Hinata and Sasuke needed the loving companionship of Choji's mother's homemade cookies more than I did, though of course I would never refuse food for emotional support when offered. This is one of the few places I can go that the clan elders can't complain about, Hinata told me. And the hospital, of course. They like to think that the Hyuga are better than everyone else and above the law, but at the end of the day, they can't offend one of the other noble clans or the Hokage's son by disrupting a team meeting, and they can't offend Tsunade-sama by restricting her apprentice's movements. It occurred to me that Hinata had grown exponentially more clever since graduating from the academy. Oh, she had always been smart, but her shyness had prevented her from defending herself effectively because her skewed sense of cost-benefit analysis always put her own worth at the very bottom. Not anymore, though. The elders have no idea what to do with you, then, I surmised. You have too many political connections to be dealt with the easy way, but you're too rebellious to ever be the type of clan head they want. Out of curiosity, and I mean this with absolutely no offense intended at old people, how long does it take for these guys to die of old age? Sasuke asked, tactful as ever. Hinata shot him a glare, but it was half-heartedly at best. Even Choji thought it was amusing. Several guys from the third Hokage's time are still kicking. I wouldn't hold out too much hope, I said. It could take decades. We don't have that kind of time. Why are they still in power anyway? Surely they're not universally popular. They're not. But people are afraid of them, Hinata explained. Ah. Yes, of course. The caged bird seal is applied to the unmarked children old enough to survive the process when the clan head turns 3. Niji got his when he was 4, see? The only reason Hanabi doesn't have one yet is because by the time she was old enough to get the mark, I had proven myself to be an utterly mediocre disappointment. And I still am. Not exactly mediocre, Choji pointed out. And disappointment is a matter of perspective. I stopped caring about their opinions a long time ago. They don't matter to me, you guys do. But for the rest of the clan, the branch members at least, they have all been marked with the caged bird seal since they were children. They don't know anything else but pain for disobedience. Even if they think rebellion, they could never act on it, and since they cannot act on it, they cannot prevent it for their own children. It is slavery spread across generations. That is the only way such a tiny main house can control so many branch houses. Theoretically, the Hokage could forbid it, said Choji. The official excuse is still, of course, the threat of bloodline theft. That the seal is a benevolent thing meant for stability and protection of clan members. So they say. Hinata's eye roll was highly visible even with her complete lack of pupils. The problem is, that statement is not entirely untrue, and for someone like the Hokage, It's more important to prevent rival villages from acquiring a Konoha bloodline than it is to spend time and energy putting a stop to this mess, I said. Exactly. Meanwhile, any potential compromise of also giving the main branch members the caged bird seal is impossible, because they just claim the seal doesn't work that way. And of course no one can prove it because the technique of applying the seal is a secret. But it should be trivial to create a self-destruct seal that destroys the Byakugan upon death without also allowing some other owner to use it to cause pain at will, I pointed out. If there's less functionality, then it should be easier to make, I'm sure, said Hinata. But that doesn't help the people who already have the caged bird seal on their foreheads. I know for a fact that it goes deeper than the forehead because extended punishment causes literal brain cell death. It's not just something you can wipe off or rip out. Have you looked at them using your Byakugan before? I asked. Sure. It's not forbidden or uncommon. Everyone with an activated Byakugan has seen the chakra behind it at one point or another, and yet no one knows how it works. All we know is, the chakra holding the seal together starts at the forehead and punctures deep into the skull, like a mass of tree roots. You actually get a better view of the chakra network of the seal itself when you look at someone's head in profile, rather than from the front. All the front really shows you is the surface design, Hinata explained. Tree roots, huh? An idea began to take form in my head. Yes. And obviously it's attached to either a chakra source or some kind of nerve for detecting brain or heart activity, because it needs a way to detect when the victim is dead. But it's also connected to the chakra of the main house members, otherwise the whole pain control aspect of it wouldn't work. Sasuke and Choji, used to both of our mutual nerdiness, shot each other a look that probably said, "Oh boy, here they go again." I said, thinking of Kakashi-sensei's arm, won't any seal just die if we starve it of chakra for long enough? The trouble is, if the seal is chakra dependent, so if it counts no more chakra as dead, it might just blow up and render the person blind. And we don't want that. Here, let me get a piece of paper so I can draw it out for you. So we can't disconnect it before we deactivate it, otherwise it might damage whatever parts of the brain it's attached to. But we can't deactivate it before we disconnect it, otherwise it might think the person is dead and try to destroy the corpse. I frowned. Tricky. The seal in its current state can't be removed, but there's no reason we can't modify it. I thought you said we can't disconnect or deactivate it. Hinata asked, but we can draw on top of it. Right now, there is only a single death condition that needs to be met in order for the corpse anti-destroying post-death phase to trigger, I explained. But if we simply add another condition, and attach it in such a way that both must be met, we can make that second condition something impossible. Then, even if we deactivate the caged bird seal, the post-death phase won't happen, and then we can wait for the seal to starve normally, and remove it. And after we remove it, we can replace it with the normal seal that isn't connected to the main house. Hinata concluded excitedly. So now the only question remaining is, can we do all this without getting caught? If a branch member's seal is deactivated, can the main house feel it disconnect? Good question. I don't think so, since neither Hanabi nor I ever felt it, but maybe it's different for clan heads. There's probably an easy way to check.